I am 83 years old now, and there is one lesson I wish life had taught me much sooner. When you live alone, the silence does not arrive all at once. It slips in quietly. No one knocks on your door to ask if you are okay. No one asks whether you remembered to eat. No one notices how many days have passed since you last heard another human voice. For nearly a week I had barely spoken to anyone. The strange thing is, I did not notice it at first. Until one afternoon I found myself standing in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. And then, out of nowhere, a thought came to me. When was the last time I truly spoke to someone? That question frightened me. But what frightened me even more was this. It no longer felt strange. I'd gotten used to it. My name is Eleanor. I am 83 years old, and I have been living alone for a long time. And over those years I made mistakes I did not recognize at first. Small mistakes, quiet mistakes, the kind you tell yourself do not matter. But little by little they changed me, until one day I realized I could barely recognize the woman I'd become. So if you are living alone now, or if life brings you to that place someday, please listen carefully, because I want to tell you about the mistakes you must not make. When Henry passed away, I was suddenly alone. We'd spent 46 years together. 46 years of shared meals, ordinary mornings, small arguments, familiar footsteps, and the comfort of knowing someone else was in the house. Then, one day, the house went quiet. At first I thought I was managing. I still cooked. I still did the laundry. I still took care of myself the way I always had. The house was quiet. But I kept telling myself I was used to it. I told myself, this is fine, I can handle this. But slowly, something began to change. Not all at once. Not in a way that scared me at first. I started getting tired more easily, especially when I climbed the stairs. Sometimes I would stand up and forget why I had gotten up in the first place. And there were days when I did not leave the house at all. Not because I truly wanted to stay inside, but because I could not think of a reason to go out. One morning I stood by the front door with my hand already on the handle. I was ready to leave, but then I stopped. I closed the door again and went back inside. That was when it began. The things I failed to notice. The small choices I thought meant nothing. But in the end, those little choices were the very things that slowly changed everything. Mistake number 1. Pulling away from people completely. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make, and sadly it is also one of the easiest. I did not recognize it in the beginning. After Henry was gone, I thought the quiet was simply part of grieving. I thought it was normal. I had grown used to the house. I'd grown used to my own company. There were days when the only sounds around me were the ticking of the clock, or the television speaking to a room where no one was really listening. Sometimes I would see my child's name on my phone. I would think about calling. I wanted to hear a familiar voice. But then I would stop myself. I would say, "They are busy. I do not want to bother anyone." So instead of calling, I turned off the light, went to bed, and told myself it was nothing. Until one day I finally realized something. It had been 4 days. 4 whole days without a real conversation with another person. And the part that hurt the most was not the number. It was that it no longer felt unusual. It had started to feel normal. That was when I became afraid. Because loneliness does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it comes quietly. It pulls you back one small step at a time, until you do not even notice that the world outside your door has disappeared. So I tried to change. I started small. I called my sister, even though I had nothing important to say. Some days I stepped outside for a few minutes, not because I felt like it, but because I knew I needed to. And through that I learned something important. You cannot wait until loneliness has already swallowed you before you try to reach for someone. Because once you get that far, finding your way back becomes much harder. Do not let your world become so small that one day you are the only person left inside it. Mistake number 2, neglecting your health. When Henry was still alive, he was always reminding me, "Did you take your medicine? Isn't your doctor's appointment coming up? Did you write it down?" At the time, I would sometimes get irritated. I felt as if he was treating me like a child. But now I understand. He was not trying to control me. He was helping me stay alive. Because after he was gone, there was no one left to remind me. And that was where the trouble began. Some days I told myself, I am fine. Nothing hurt, nothing felt urgent. So I stopped going to the doctor. 1 week became a month. 1 month quietly became many months. And before I realized it, almost a year had passed. Then, one day, I finally had no choice but to go for a checkup. The doctor looked at my results, then looked back at me, and slowly shook his head. "Your blood pressure is high," he said. "Not just high, dangerously high." I sat there in silence. I did not know how long it had been that way. Months, maybe even longer. And that was what frightened me most. When you live alone, no one sees the slow decline. No one notices the small changes. No one realizes something is wrong until the damage has already begun. So I had to change. I started writing everything down. Appointments, medicines, times, small notes on paper, alarms on my phone. And I still do it now, even when I sometimes cannot remember how to turn the alarm off. Because there is a hard truth about living alone. You become the person responsible for keeping yourself alive. And if you neglect that responsibility, there may be no one standing close enough to catch you. Do not wait until your body gives up before you finally begin to care for it. Mistake number 3, refusing to ask for help. This was the one I denied for the longest time. I kept telling myself I could still manage, even when things were becoming harder, even when I was getting tired faster than before. I would still say, I do not need help. When ordinary tasks started feeling heavy, I kept it to myself. The stairs became harder to climb. The lights that needed changing stayed unchanged. I stopped looking at the things I could no longer fix. One afternoon I tried to replace a light bulb. Years ago it would have taken me less than a minute. But that day I just stood there with the bulb in my hand, unable to do it. My hand was shaking, and still I did not ask anyone for help. When my child offered and said, "I can help you around the house," I only smiled and answered, "I am still fine." I said that sentence so many times. I am still fine. Until one day it was no longer true. One night I could not open a bottle of medicine. I tried again and again, twisting it, pressing it, turning it until my hands began to ache, but I could not open it. So I sat at the table, holding that small bottle in my hands. And for the first time, I did not feel alone because no one was there. I felt alone because I had refused to let anyone in. not because there was no one around me, but because I had never allowed myself to ask. The next morning, my sister came over. She did not make a big speech. She didn't ask too many questions. She simply walked inside, sat down, and began helping me put things in order. She organized my medicine, wrote down the times, checked what I had forgotten, and I just sat there quietly, watching her. Then, suddenly, I could not hold it in anymore. I cried, not because I was weak, but because I had needed help for a long time, and I had been too proud to admit it. That day, I learned something I will never forget. Asking for help does not mean you are useless. It does not mean you have failed. It simply means you are honest enough to know when something has become too much to carry alone. It only means you understand when you can no longer do everything by yourself. And if you never learn that, you will keep pushing, keep pretending, keep carrying too much, until one day you finally break. Mistake number 4. Neglecting your meals and your daily routine. I never thought this would be the place where I would begin to fall apart. Before, everything had its time. I cooked proper meals. Henry and I sat at the table together. We talked while we ate. There was a rhythm to the day. There was a reason to make an effort. But after he was gone, everything changed. At first, I still cooked. Not as much as before, but I tried. Then slowly, even that became less and less. Until one day I realized I no longer sat down to eat. I would stand in the kitchen and eat a piece of bread, or whatever was easiest to grab. Some nights I skipped dinner completely, and I would tell myself, it is only me. There is no reason to make so much effort. That was what I kept telling myself. But I did not notice what was happening to me. Little by little, I was becoming weaker. I felt tired all the time. I had no energy, no appetite. At first, I blamed it on age. I told myself, this is just what getting older feels like. But it was not only age. It was the way I had stopped caring for my own life. Some days, I did not even get dressed. I stayed in my night clothes, sitting in the same chair, watching television without really watching it. I did not go outside. I barely moved. Then, one day, I realized even a short walk felt difficult. And that was when I understood something. Living alone does not give you permission to abandon yourself. Even when no one is watching. Even when no one is coming over. Even when no one notices what you ate, how you dressed, or whether you stepped outside, your body still needs care. So I forced myself to change, in small ways. I sat down properly when I ate. I used a real plate instead of paper. I walked outside, even if it was only near the house, not because I always wanted to, but because I needed to. Because your body does not stop needing you, just because you are alone. And if you neglect it for too long, you begin to disappear slowly without even realizing it. Mistake number 5, letting your home become a burden. This house was not just a house to me. Henry and I lived here for 40 years. Our children grew up inside these walls. Birthdays happened here. Arguments happened here. Quiet mornings, family dinners, ordinary days, all of them lived in this place. So when he was gone, I could not bring myself to leave. I told myself I can still take care of it. And in the beginning, I could. I cleaned. I kept things in order. I moved through the rooms as if nothing had changed. But as time passed, little things began to slip away from me. The grass outside grew longer than it should have. The gutters went untouched. Dust settled in places I could no longer reach. There was even a broken step on the porch. Every day I walked past it. Every day I noticed it. And every day I told myself I would deal with it later. But I never did. Not because I did not care, but because I did not know how to fix it anymore. And worse than that, I did not want to ask for help. Until one day, my child came to visit. And of course, they noticed it right away. "Mom, why haven't you had this fixed yet?" I smiled the way I always did when I wanted to hide the truth. "I will take care of it," I said. But deep down I knew I would not. Because the truth was, I could not do it anymore. After they left, I sat alone in the living room and looked around. And for the first time I felt it clearly. The house that had once protected me, the house that had held my whole life, was slowly becoming too heavy for me to carry. Every broken thing reminded me of something I could no longer do. Every task I avoided felt like proof that I was not the same woman I used to be. So I had to accept what I had been refusing to admit. I found people who could help. Someone came to cut the grass. Someone checked the repairs. Someone looked at the things I had been walking past for months. I spent money I did not want to spend, but I did it anyway, because I learned something important. Your home should give you peace, not constant stress. And admitting that some things have become too much for you is not weakness. What is harder is staying in a situation that quietly wears you down every single day. You do not always have to leave your home, but sometimes you have to change the way you live inside it. Because when your own house begins to feel like a weight on your chest, you can slowly lose yourself within its walls. Mistake number 6, losing your reason to keep going. This is the hardest one for me to admit, because this was not about my body. It was not about the house. It was about something much deeper inside me. At first, I was still busy. There were things to manage, things to clean, things to remember, small tasks that filled the day. But over time, those things became fewer. And one day, I noticed something that frightened me. I had nothing waiting for me the next morning. I would wake up, sit down, drink my coffee, and then ask myself, what am I supposed to do today? Most days I had no answer. I did not realize it at first, but little by little I was losing the desire to do anything. Not because I was only tired, but because it felt as if there was no longer a reason. Some mornings I did not get out of bed right away. I would lie there staring at the ceiling, asking myself, what is the point now? And that is the most dangerous place to reach. Not loneliness, not age, not even a weak body, but the feeling that you no longer matter. Because once you start believing that, you slowly begin to stop living. Not suddenly, not all at once, but quietly, day by day, until there is almost nothing left that you want to do. It took me a long time to understand this. You do not need a grand purpose to keep going. You do not need to be important to everyone. Sometimes you only need one small thing. One reason to get out of bed. One reason to move. One reason to step outside and remind yourself that life is still happening. So I started small. I went outside even when I had nowhere to go. I spoke to people even if it was only a short conversation. And even when I did not feel better right away, I knew I was no longer standing still. Because there is one truth I have learned. If you allow your reason to keep living to disappear, the next thing that disappears may be you. Mistake number 7. Losing your sense of time. When you live alone, time can become strange. The days begin to blend together. Before you realize it, every morning feels the same as the last. There were mornings when I would wake up, and I would not know what day it was. Was it Monday? Was it Thursday? Sometimes I had to look at the calendar just to be sure. At first, I thought that kind of freedom felt light. No schedule, no one waiting for me, nothing I had to rush toward. For a while, it almost felt peaceful. But after some time, it began to feel different. It felt as if I was losing my direction. The day had no real beginning and no real ending. You wake up, you sit down, you pass the time, and then suddenly, it is night again, and you cannot remember what you actually did with the hours you were given. That was when I understood. You do not have to fill every minute of your day, but you do need a little structure. So I created a small routine for myself. One day for groceries, one day for cleaning, one day to step outside, even if only for a simple walk. Not because I loved having a schedule, but because I needed something to hold on to. I didn't want to get lost inside my own time, because when you lose direction, it becomes easy to drift. And if you allow yourself to drift for too long, you may not even notice the days passing by, as if you were barely part of them. Mistake number 8. Holding on too tightly to the past. For a long time I did not touch Henry's things. His clothes were still hanging in the closet. His shoes were still by the door. His favourite cup was still in the kitchen, untouched. I thought that if I left everything exactly where it was, it would somehow feel like he was still with me. But over time, something else happened. I stopped moving forward. Every day I kept seeing the life I had lost. Every corner of the house reminded me of yesterday. And every time I looked at those things, it felt as if the past was reaching out and holding me in place. Until one day, I sat down on the edge of the bed, looked around the room, and finally understood something. He was not there, only the things were. It was painful to admit, but slowly I began to sort through them. I kept the things that truly mattered, the ones that still carried love, not pain. But the rest, I learned to let go, because I discovered something. You can remember someone without living inside the past forever. You can love someone deeply and still allow yourself to breathe again. And sometimes, in order to breathe, you have to make space, even when it hurts. Mistake number 9, neglecting the space around you. After Henry was gone, I slowly stopped taking care of my surroundings. I did not clean the way I used to. I left dishes in the sink. Papers stayed scattered across the table. Clothes remained unfolded for days. And I kept telling myself, it is only me here. No one else sees it, so maybe it does not matter. But over time I began to feel something different. The room began to feel heavier. Every morning I would wake up and see the same mess waiting for me, the same dishes, the same papers, the same clothes, the same quiet weight in the air. Until one day I sat down, looked around, and finally understood. It was not really about the mess. It was about self-respect. So I began again, slowly, not all at once. One corner at a time, one small space each day. Because even when you live alone, you still deserve a place that feels cared for. You still deserve a home that does not make your heart feel heavier the moment you open your eyes. The house became quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It was no longer as heavy as before. I did not learn all of this in one day. I learned it slowly, through every mistake, through every lonely morning, through every moment when I almost gave up on myself. And at my age, I am no longer searching for a perfect life. A true one is enough. A morning with one small reason to rise is enough. So if you are living alone now, or if life brings you there someday, please do not disappear while you are still alive, because as long as you are breathing, your life still matters. And if even one part of my story stays with you, carry it with you. Let it remind you to check on yourself, to ask for help when you need it, to keep a small reason in your heart even on the quiet days. And if you would like to hear more stories like this, you are welcome to stay. Listen again. Walk with me for a little while. I am still here, just like you, still learning.